What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports. Is Ole Miss the third best team in the SEC West? Well, the FPI thinks so. It's really close, though, between the Rebels and the Aggies. Let's get into their ranking. They have a 13.4 FPI, which means on a neutral field against an average opponent, they would win by 13.4 points. They're ranked number 16, which I believe is right around where I had them in my pre-spring power rankings. I think that's a pretty good spot. 13.4, that puts them compared to, let's say, Texas A&M, who's right behind them. But Texas A&M's at 12.7, so they're really close to the Aggies. Those two teams pretty similar as far as the FPI goes. But at 13.4, Ole Miss is well behind Alabama and LSU, especially Alabama. Alabama's 28.2, LSU 22.1, so I guess they're not too far behind, but again would be over a touchdown underdog on a neutral field against LSU according to the FPI. Let's go now to their projected win-loss record, 7.6 and 4.4. I would probably bump that up a little bit. I think our projection had them at 8-4, and if you average this or you round this up, you would get 8-4, but I'd probably go a little bit closer to the actual number of 8-4. But yeah, that's a pretty fair projection. You know, you got to get through the SEC. They do play a Tulane and Georgia Tech in the non-conference games. They should be favored in, but not by a ton. So I get that. Yeah, 8-4 is a very fair projection, even at 7.6. Again, that wouldn't round up to 8-4. And then their chances of going undefeated, and this would include the SEC championship, 0%. They have a 0% chance of going undefeated, according to the FPI, and only a 94.6% chance to get to a bowl game. I say only just because most of these top teams are much higher than that. So, for example, Ole Miss is ranked number 16, and this is what, that gives them a 94.6% chance of getting to a bowl game. Well, just ahead of them, Utah, one spot ahead of them, they have a 98.2% chance of getting to a bowl game. So that just kind of shows you, of course, the schedule is going to be tougher. The SEC is going to be tougher, and that's why that number is not closer to 100%. Winning the division, they have a 2% chance of winning the SEC West. We can compare that to Texas A&M. Texas A&M is actually at 2.3%. So I guess, Ole Miss does play Georgia as one of their crossover games this year, so maybe that's why that number is higher actually for Texas A&M. But it's interesting that Ole Miss is ranked ahead of Texas A&M, but they give Texas A&M a slightly better chance of winning the SEC West. So 2%, and then you go above that, LSU's at 20.4, Alabama's at 74.3. So again, the FBI very, very high on Alabama. They're pretty much guaranteeing Alabama and Georgia in the SEC championship. Ole Miss way behind that, and I actually agree with that. I don't see them getting past Alabama and LSU. Now, I think Alabama and LSU's percentages should be much closer together, but I do think there's a pretty good gap after those teams, and 2% is probably pretty fair. Win the SEC, 0.4%. Again, I just don't see it happening. If they did somehow get to the SEC championship, then they got to beat Georgia, potentially Tennessee. The odds definitely against them. I would put them at 0, but yeah, 0.4 is probably pretty accurate. And how about getting to the college football playoff? 0.9% chance, a little bit better chance there. If they were to lose, let's say to Alabama, that's their only loss. Alabama goes on to win the SEC, goes undefeated, whatever, then Ole Miss could maybe sneak in that way as far as getting in without winning the SEC. But they're probably going to have to win the SEC. They got to play Georgia, like I said, as a non-division game. So that just makes a really tough schedule and a really tough path for this Ole Miss team to get into the playoff. And then you got making the national championship, 0.2% chance there. Not much of a chance at all that the Rebels get to the national championship, and then winning it, 0%. And that lines up with, I gave a list of teams that I thought could possibly make the playoff and could possibly win the national championship. Ole Miss was not on that list. I did not see them potentially winning a national championship this year. So I actually agree with that 0%. So overall, yeah, I think they did a pretty good job on Ole Miss. Right there around our projection at 8-4. Not much of a chance to win the SEC or get to the playoff, but not a 0% chance. And then ranking them at number 16, like I said, that's pretty close to where, might even be exactly where I had them in my rankings. So Ole Miss, the FBI, I think, did a pretty good job on them. What do you guys think?